Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings to the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem called Visor'd, poem number 21 of the 29 of By the Roadside. It's a fascinating little poem, and there's always been this debate about, do you really want to know who Walt Whitman is? Well, then read Leaves of Grass. And there's going to be a number of scholars, Harold Bloom comes to mind, who makes the argument, really, you read all of Leaves of Grass and you still by the end of it have no real clear understanding of who Walt Whitman is, because he's always going to be having a certain kind of persona or mask. We're going to play that game here. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt, all the way from the beginning with inscriptions, up through and including an introductory set of comments for Roadside, and we just finished with Thought. Our background information here coming to us from Norton's will say that these four lines formed a stanza of the poem Debris in Leaves of Grass 1860. They constituted a poem with the present title and ungrouped in Leaves of Grass 1867 and 71, and then again in 76, and were placed in By the Roadside in 1881. The interesting word of this poem will be herself as opposed to myself. And there's obviously a lot of debate about whether we should probably read this poem as the word myself instead of herself. Visor'd. A mask, a perpetual natural disguiser of herself, concealing her face, concealing her form, changes and transformations every hour, every moment, falling upon her even when she sleeps. Now, we've had, of course, two poems already in Roadside with Beautiful Women and Mother and Babe, where we were looking at the feminine, and here we'll play the same game again, and of course we start with the word mask. You'll maybe remember from Scented Herbage of My Breast, behind the mask you patiently wait. And we made comment when we saw that poem about that line and the way in which everything for Whitman is about transparency through the mask, right? Notice we have a perpetual natural disguiser of herself. And this use of the word disguiser, this is the only time that word gets used in all of Leaves of Grass. By the way, we're going to come back to natural a couple of more times in the two poems to follow. So it's clearly kind of in his mind. Notice it is a natural disguiser of herself, not myself, which is fascinating. Concealing her face, concealing her form. Now, there's a lot that's been made about whether we're speaking of a literal woman here or some kind of symbol, maybe even, for example, as in the Proverbs idea of the notion that wisdom is perceived as the feminine. Changes and transformations, which this is the only time in all Leaves of Grass the word transformations gets used in this way. Changes and transformations every hour, every moment, and then this interesting last line, falling upon her even when she sleeps, which of course takes us back to Mother and Babe with the sleeping mother there. Now, exactly what is going on here in this poem, we have to maybe speculate. Are we talking about Whitman's own secrets and who is the real Walt Whitman? I think in 2A, though, we could simply point out that Whitman is going to make the argument that masks wearing is a very ancient tradition, and we all kind of wear masks to hide who and what we really are at times, and these masks are always changing and the transformations are always occurring. At 2B, I would point out, of course, this word choice of herself, not myself. This poem obviously could be a little different poem if we're going to say myself. At 3A, go back and take a look at Dunbar's We Wear the Mask. I've given a full lecture on it at learnstrong.net. And also, of course, T.S. Eliot's Prufrock. Each morning he says, as the old man Prufrock, we prepare a face to meet the faces that we meet. Time for you, and time for me, and time yet for 100 decisions and indecisions before the taking of a toast and tea. This idea that we're always trying to get somehow hidden behind the masks that will maybe save us. We'll see, of course, some of that in T.S. Eliot's Holloman as well. And then finally at 3B, to own a poem like this, what are your thoughts about masks and personae? Of course, the Greeks would actually hold the mask in their drama in front of their face, which is where we get our notion of person and personae. What are your thoughts about that? Are masks useful? Do you think it's important that artists, for example, learn how to wear different kinds of masks? And to that degree, are all great artists really just kind of natural disguisers of a kind? I'll leave that one to you to try to consider. Thank you.